Welcome to another episode of the Modus Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Pastore. Today's topic is NHL and Olympic training. And one thing I can say from years of being in the field is that I always felt there was some excellence coming out of the state of Connecticut. There was a revolution in precision training started by one man, and that man is our guest today. That is Mr. Ben Prentiss. Whenever I would hear the term NHL or see a game or speak with a pro player in the NHL, Ben always came to mind. He is simply a wizard in his craft. He is brilliant. I'm also honored to say Ben is a dear friend. Prentiss Hockey Performance is a premier training facility for world-class athletes located in Stamford, Connecticut. This was founded by Ben Prentiss. Prentiss Hockey Performance is a haven for Stanley Cup champions, gold medal Olympians. Any athlete that's serious about next level training typically finds their way to Ben's establishment. And this is all word of mouth, by the way. This guy just really put in all the work after years of study himself. Now, Ben's client list is also kind of a who's who of professional hockey, as you can imagine. From recent Hall of Fame inductee Martin St. Louis to Stanley Cup champion Jonathan Quick, it's a real impressive roster. Dare I say it, kind of like the dream team of professional hockey. So I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Hey everyone, it's Lexi jumping in here really quickly. So unfortunately, we did have some serious technical errors during the recording, and we've lost the first 20 minutes of the podcast, which Dr. Pastore and I are super bummed about because it was great content. But Ben is a really busy guy, and this was one of the only time slots that we could grab from him. But do know that the content that we have recorded is still a great conversation. And with that, I apologize, but let's dive right in.
And one of the things that blows my mind is the over-reliance on technology. I was at a sports summit in the end of June, and I was at an NBA's complex, and they brought in all these science guys, and I'm a scientist, but they had so much gear. They had more gear than Kiss was preparing to use at a final rock concert at Madison Square Garden in the late 70s. And at the end of the day, the strength and conditioning coaches just want to work on each individual guy and optimize everything that they're doing. So I think that's a big deal, you know?
Yeah, the longer, now I've been training athletes for 24 years, and absolutely you need to understand anatomy and exercise science and biomechanics, and those things are imperative. And then you have to understand how to write programs and to macro cycle. But when you start getting into teams and you start delving into the mind of these athletes, creating a culture, creating trust, adapting on the fly, these things become almost more important than all of the others in terms of getting success out of your athlete. So there needs to be a blend. The exercise science guys will tell you that the strength coaches are, dumb meatheads or whatever, for lack of a better expression. And the strength coach dumb meatheads will tell you that the exercise science guys are nerds and don't know anything about sports. And in my opinion, you need to understand them all. And the famous Bruce Lee phrase, use what is important and discard what is not. You need to know it all, and you apply it as you apply it. So to me, I've learned a lot about all of the technologies, but then again, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is your head coach going to use it? Now, it can be different if, I train Olympic skeleton, and that's obviously one person, or bobsled, or shot put, or track, where that's one person. But in a team sport, if your coach doesn't want to look at what you're doing or utilize what you're doing, then you'd be better served applying your efforts into a different direction.
That makes a ton of sense. And I agree wholeheartedly. And that also brings me to something we're getting a taste of, the Ben Prentiss work ethic. Could you just say something about what your typical summers are like, Ben?
Well, strength coaches are very, very much sort of undervalued in terms of the amount of work they put in. So I'm sure there's plenty of guys like me, but just on my end, it's, up at 6 a.m. Typically, we do now, to get everybody in, we do usually groups of 2. I used to just do one-on-ones, but to sort of get everybody in, we'll do group 2 guys. So I'll take 2 guys at a time. So I typically do a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. So that's 6. So that's 12 guys in 6 hours. I'll take like 20 minutes to sort of regroup. And then I'll do, then I have groups of teams of 6 guys for the next 3 hours. So then I'll finish at about 4 o'clock. I'll run the gym, which, at that time we're doing over 150 people a day. So I have 14 other coaches besides me doing the same thing.
Wow.
And then I'll catch a workout at the end of the day, go home, write programs, and set everything up for the week and who needs workouts, and wash and repeat, rinse and repeat, and do that for May, April, basically May, June, July, and August. And then we start testing guys in September. So that's a sort of a quick little glance.
Wow. And just hearing it, I'm exhausted. So bless your heart. And again, it's that amazing work ethic you have, and God bless you, love what you do, and it makes you even better at it. Now, Ben, when you're implementing these programs during the summer, and again, I don't want to not following a philosophy you have now, but from what I recall with the way you would train these top guys, you kind of had an approach that at the time, I remember it being considered a phase system. I don't know if that's still how you're looking at it, where you're breaking things apart. And again, please embellish, go on a
Yeah.
But I recall like structural and intensification, etc. Yeah.
Well, so absolutely. Again, I that's the way it started in 1999, 2000, 2001, and then as the years went on, as I became more busy, I realized, you're referring to like a block system, which is essentially the Russian block system. And then, that's a thing that strength coaches will argue about here and there. And I agree in that. And when you get into team sports, especially in season, periodization becomes a lot harder to do because of travel, practicing, injuries, classes, whatever the case may be, that you have to adapt more on the fly, and your programs need to be more pencil than in pen, so to speak.
Yeah.
In the summertime is, the off season. So those are two, you literally through a macro cycle, you have preseason, you have in season, you have postseason, which we do different stuff. And then after postseason, you go off season. And those are two different things, because what we do when the athlete gets done with the season is different. Every athlete, I kind of coined the phrase, they're skinny, fat, weak, tired, and toxic at the end of a season. And so you can now, put them back together and get them ready for their best year of their life, or, you're fired, that kind of thing. So with that being said, I felt that, 2 to 4 week phases is typically what we do, depending on what we're hitting. And in that phase, it's not necessarily, it's more of what's called a conjugate system, or changing, in that we don't just focus on one thing, and meaning we don't just take one block for power. We don't just take one block for isometric. We don't just take one block for eccentric. We don't just take one block from dynamic. Why? Because in my opinion, 4 weeks is far too long in the circumference of 12 weeks to eliminate one of those modalities for 4 weeks. So once the athlete it gets the initial, most everybody in the beginning does the same thing. There is no such thing as sports specificity. A split squat is a split squat. There's no hockey split squat. There's no track split squat. They train the same in that bottom of a pyramid. And then as you get closer to the top of that pyramid, you become more sport specific. So pretty much in the beginning month, most people do the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we progress and get them stronger and have fixed their imbalances and their weaknesses, then we can apply power. Then we can apply some different things to sort of get them more specifically ready for what that sport's going to look like.
And you're also well known for really mixing it up and really challenging the guys and taking them into an environment that may be different, actually going outside your facility and have them doing various types of exercises outside. I've seen guys moving sleds. Then there was another guy who said, one of your pros said, Ben can give you an excellent workout in the back of the truck. So I'm paraphrasing.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, and you know, there's a difference between, you know, personal training and strength and conditioning, meaning that, you know, if I was to train a quote unquote general population person, the program per se and the periodization per se isn't as important as kind of quote unquote giving that person a great workout for that hour. Whereas in an athlete, you have to look at it as a whole, meaning there's ebbs and flows to a phase where, okay, are you going on the ice after this? You are. Okay, so now I'm going to potentiate rather than annihilate. Okay, you were just on the ice. All right, well, now I'm going to recover more than I am going to sort of step on the gas. Or, hey, I'm taking 4 days off. Okay, now we can ramp it up here or there. So you have to pick and choose. It's not just about laying the hammer down on somebody every single workout, because as you well know, then you start to look at adrenal fatigue and high cortisol. And those are things that, you know, you have to fine tune because they're there to get better, stronger, healthier from a season where all of those adrenals and cortisol is all affected. So it's my job to get them better. And that's kind of what you're seeing now with every gym on every corner and everybody wants to be a trainer, is that, you know, guys are just, you know, beating guys up all summer, and when they get ready to training camp, they're already tired for an 82 game season because they've quote unquote trained so hard. So, you know, we like to think that in the past 12 years or so, we've really applied being there and done that so many times, kind of applied a method and understanding exactly what to do in every situation to help them. So when they start their season, and you got to remember too, is that, you know, training camp is September 17th, usually, give or take that day. Most guys leave gyms across North America September 1st to go to wherever they're going. So then that means that they have about 3+ weeks. If they're not a guy who's signed and so to speak, already star, he might have to live in a hotel for 3 weeks where he's trying to make a team, eating hotel food and sleeping on a bad bed and all of the non-sleep hygienic things that we try to get the guys to do, he has to fight with. Or, you know, the training might not be the same. So you have to take into account all those things to make sure that they're ready at the right time.
Those are critical points. And I know a lot of doctors that are on medical advisory boards for pro baseball teams that alter the training schedule based on a questionnaire or an actigraph of how well that athlete slept the night prior, because that's going to have a dramatic effect on their ability to perform and increase their ratio for injury. I've always been concerned there because when we have this like rush of catecholamines, you know, norepinephrine, epinephrine, stress-based neurotransmitters, that while they're essential, we can have some serious problems with error. There could be more mistakes made if things just get out of whack and get out of balance. And in your world, it really dovetails into what you're talking about. If someone's too sympathetic versus parasympathetic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like what you're 100% right. And then you have to look like how many athletes are dopamine. I mean, dopamine dominant, I should say. Mm-hmm. So yep. It's to look at those things and then to write a program sort of neurotransmittingly to what they're doing. So that's how we kind of do it, is look at the neurotransmitter profile and then we apply. So there's the force velocity curve, and then we also use that, but then we also use a neurotransmitter profile to really try to isolate. You know, we have, I think this summer we had 52 NHL, AHL guys, and out of those 52, I can honestly, I mean, obviously some of them do the same exercises, but each one of their workouts, we kind of surf that wave or that profile, and we try to optimize where their neurotransmitters are. So we do look at each guy every 4 weeks. We retest them with force plate analysis on vertical jump. We do hand grip for fatigue. We look at isometric mid-thigh pull, and we look at body fat. And we do that every 4 weeks to make sure that no stone is unturned that when they're either working with us or the soft tissue doctors, again, because a lot of guys look for recovery, cryo is a big new thing. Infrared sauna has been around forever, but now people are starting to recognize, but you got to use those things in the right way. And you have to get treatment from your soft tissue doctor at the right time. Because all those things affect your training. And then you take into account in the NHL, you got to remember, these are 20-year-old to 30-year-old guys. This is the season for marriage. So I've had a guy come to me and say, hey, I got to get in the best shape of my life in these 4 months. And by the way, I'm going to 14 weddings this summer. So, good luck with that. Not only travel and what, wedding food and that, but basically every weekend all summer, you have one of your athletes going to a wedding or getting married or whatever the case. So, you have to take into account all of those things.
And that's hard. And of course, I'm sure you want to maintain the athlete's quality of life, and trying to navigate all those areas that's actually a new one. I thought I heard it all by now, what athletes to me, but that's one I never heard before. That many weddings. I know you're embellishing there. I hope that's not really 14.
No, I'm not embellishing that. That's an absolute true story. And the guy that did that went to 14 weddings, the following season, he actually made the All-Star team. So we were able to manage that. But on the average, I would say most guys go to 3 to 5 weddings a summer.
Wow. My goodness.
The hockey community is a rather small community. So, a lot of guys are whether they play juniors or whatever the case may be. So, that's the case. I mean, and I know for myself, just from the athletes that I train, I typically go to, 2 to 3 a summer.
Oh my God. That's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. But I love the commonalities. I worked with a lot of hockey guys, but my bread and butter in my main practice years was Major League Baseball. And we called that season the grind. And I was very lucky to work with teams that we'd get into the playoffs. So now we have even more games. And I love what you said about, you're skinny, you're fat, you're this, you're that, you're exhausted, you're hurting. By the end of one of those super long seasons, and you get a guy that gets right to the World Series and they don't win, there's that emotional aspect there, which is really difficult to deal with for your athletes, for yourself, for the coaching staff and everyone you become really close with. But it's remarkable to see how battered some of these guys are. And it's not anywhere near as physical as the sport that you're working in. But I've had guys lose like 18 to 25 pounds in that last rush. And the time changes, especially when you got an East Coast team playing a West Coast team. And oh my God, it's brutal. It's brutal.
The travel to me is what a lot of time wins or loses games with guys with recovery in season, especially on the NHL level. And it's not typically going out to the coast or to the East Coast. It's typically coming back that gets guys. And then they usually have a game the next day. And, the fans think, oh, they're going to Las Vegas or they're going to Miami in basketball, or their guys are going to go out and have fun, so they're not going to win. That's not usually the case. It's the other way around when they get back and they've slept in a hotel and their circadian rhythm is just shot. And by the way, we can throw in, supplements there that really help with that sort of thing. But that's what we look at, and sleep. I call it sleep hygiene. A lot of other people I have different phrases for it, but we try to give them a whole protocol. And again, good luck trying to tell a 22-year-old to not look at his cell phone or anything electronic for 45 minutes, or, look at this brand new thing just created in 2019 called a book, and not a book on Kindle, and a book actually with pages in it. And, they'll look at you like you're crazy, but that's the reality of it. And all you need is a little bit buy-in. And if the placebo of, luckily a kid scores a goal the next day after I told him to do that, I got him. And I've had a few guys where they'll text me, what do I eat for breakfast today? Game's at 1:00. And I'll tell them what to do all the way up to the game. And if they score a goal, obviously it wasn't me, telling them what to eat that scored the goal, but they feel sort of that did it, then hey, all the better, because they ate healthy, they stabilized their blood sugar, they created a good situation for them to be in. And, you're dealing with a lot of guys that, chug Red Bulls in between periods. A lot of old school NHL guys lived on Ambien, and, we have to get them off of that in the summer. And, these are things that, the dirty things to get guys healthy again.
Mm-hmm. And, if I could bring it up, or we could just touch upon it, we can glaze right over it. But something that I saw a lot, there's an alcohol culture, and that's a challenging.
It more so. I mean, there were guys. So guys, when I first started 20 years ago, absolutely, you get on the plane, and before the plane takes off, the team plane, they fly private. Their guys are 4 or 5 beers in before the plane takes off. But now, I mean, you're dealing with it, the NHL is so much younger and so much faster. Mm-hmm. Is it still prevalent? Yes. But I try to tell guys, give them better alternatives, try to explain to them, especially most of my guys, again, we do all sorts of testing and hormonal testing and see, but most of them, I would say, are dairy and gluten-free, if not, 80%. Maybe not dairy, but gluten, I try to get pretty much all of them. And then the argument could be, well, I'm not gluten intolerant. Well, why does it matter? It's mm-hmm. You don't need it. And, if you want to keep your inflammation down, which every athlete wants to, then why not eliminate those two things? So with that being said, I try to explain to them that literally beer is probably one of the worst things that an athlete can drink, especially, the night before another game. So again, I would try to say, look, if you're going to do it, try to do it on a time where it's not going to affect you and create some inflammation or affect your gut, because again, as you know, more than anyone, now they're all looking at the gut as the second brain and looking at probiotics and things that we were preaching, 15 years ago. But now you have almost every kid that comes to me, maybe it's not a good probiotic, but at least they're saying, hey, should I take a probiotic, which is a step in the right direction.
It absolutely is a step in the right direction. Hey, Ben, so what is the most common injury, if there even is one, that you would see?
Yeah. The common answer is groin / hernia, hip type of thing. But nowadays, and that, by the way, is because of overuse. And we could get into a whole nother conversation of the fact of sports specialization at an early age is just killing kids, because hockey players aren't becoming athletes anymore, because you have, 9-10-year-old kids playing 70 games a year, which is creating that hip imbalance. That's where you're seeing FAIs and labrum tears and hernia and all these issues when they're 15, 16, because they're not getting out of skates. They have no mobility in their ankle. They're not running. I mean, we have 16-year-old kids, when we're doing a warm-up and we're just having them run up and down the turf, you'd look like they've never run before, because they don't know how to run, because, all of the elite pros played more than one sport, and the research is there that shows that you can still get to the NHL, which is close to impossible, but you can get there by playing a bunch of different sports when you're a kid, and then as you get older. So, with that being said, to get off tangent, the thing that I see probably the most now is shoulder injuries. You're looking at AC joint, you're looking at labrum in the shoulder because of all the hits. They're getting hit, their AC joint, their shoulder separation, they're reaching out for a puck. Now, you're still seeing the hip issues, but I think that the strength and conditioning community as in hockey has done a pretty good job in controlling that and training that the right way. But, the shoulder issues, I would say, is probably the biggest thing I see now.
Do you think speed plays a role in that? Because like what you were alluding to before, was hockey really changed in my lifetime so far. Growing up a Rangers fan, these were just really massive guys, and they would decimate their opponent into the boards. And then all of a sudden, you got these guys that are just so much smaller. They went from like 2 bills to like a $180 and just massive speed, or less than that. I've seen some of these guys, and it's remarkable. So I'm wondering if the speed or the change in size also adds to that different type of injury.
I think the way the game's played, it's become, in all due respect, obviously, to the greats behind it, but I think anybody can recognize the skill of the game is at an all-time high. The speed of the game is at an all-time high. the rule changes have helped to allow skilled players to really succeed. And you have a lot of, regular looking guys that happen to be tremendously skilled at a certain skill and great hockey players. So meaning, you could have one of the best hockey players in the league walk right by you and you'd think he was your accountant or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like they're not like impressively looking ripped. I mean, they're very lean, I shouldn't say that, but in terms, they don't look, if you have an NFL safety walk by you, you might not know he's an NFL safety, but that guy's some type of sport or some type of athlete, where a hockey player is typically different. So, but the acceleration and the off-season preparation, not only in the gym, but on the ice when they're working on their skating with skating coaches and then applying what they've built in the gym to apply more force on the ice, absolutely leads to, not only harder contacts because, fighting is down. It's not really, it's more just guys are so fast and are be able to make such moves that when you do that, you're going to get hit with, 1 foot, one skate on the ice, maybe, in different positions because you're trying to make moves and they're so athletic now.
Yeah, that makes most perfect sense. Look, there's no disrespect to our greats of the past, but it is a fascinating game of speed and agility, and much respect to the goalies, man. There is a lot of stuff going on, and that is such an unnatural movement. I'm thinking in my mind, imagine like a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid growing up only wanting to be a goalie or only in that position. That has to just be horrendous on their hips, the injury risk that they have, etc.
And believe it or not, it's not so much the hips. If you look at the way the butterfly and the different positions, it's really that MCL, that knee kind of movement of constantly, you have that lateral push from post to post, which is more of a glute med type of thing. But then the knees constantly going valgus and breaking down. It's the up down, it's the up down, it's the up down. When we first got started, hockey goalies were typically kind of the fattest, slowest, least non-athletic. You throw them in the net when we're growing up. And now it's become all these goalies are really lean. They're tall. And that's become sort of the norm for goalies, is super tall goalies. And that's kind of why you're seeing a lot of them get hurt because, you have a guy 6'6" and you ask him to drop down on his knees as fast as he can and then push over and go into a full split in a nanosecond. The body is, no matter what you do in the gym, your body's not ready for that. So that's why you're seeing a lot of, these groin, knee, hip, ankle injuries in goalies because it's just such a quick, innate thing that they're doing. And again, their bodies being that tall, it's tough.
So Ben, during the season, you put in all that time getting these guys together. You talked about pre and post and during season type of training. The season's getting longer and you guys they're playing now towards the end of the season and they get an injury. Your adjustment has to be like super quick. Are you on call and your phone's just blowing up all day long during season for your guys? Do you have people in the field that are addressing your philosophy as you do in your facility, doing that where they're located?
It's a pretty buttoned up thing in that once the guys leave me, I have a few veteran guys that I'll write programs throughout the year. But for the most part, they have to work with their strength coach, their athletic trainer on the team that they have. Now, with that being said, I've had numerous guys, now being 20 plus years in this, the strength coach will reach out to me and, we can sort of develop a plan together, or at least I can give him my 2 cents in that what I saw in the summer. But for the most part, the owner of the team and the GM of the team obviously want it handled under their pay grade or at least under their roof. So for the most part, that's handled within. I'll talk to the athlete themselves and make sure that they're on the right path. But, without that, with that being said, to me, the biggest problem when a guy gets hurt in the season is that he only rehabs to get back to the point of sort of think of it like sea level, where he was, below sea level, where they start the season above sea level.
Mm-hmm.
So when you rehab something, that only gets you to sea level. You're not above sea level. And then you go back onto the ice and you haven't strength trained. You've just rehabbed. So it becomes tough in that you're behind the 8 ball. And that's, in my opinion, why a lot of times when you have in season, the guy usually doesn't come back, depending on what it is. I mean, obviously, if you break your wrist or you have a shoulder issue, you can but a lower body injury is, depending on the severity of it, is very tough if you've missed, 20 or more games to come back and be really successful after that year. Then you would need more time to rehab it.
We heard you talk a lot about your love for just what you do and being physical, how much you love it yourself, health and fitness, and working with these guys, I'm sure is just a great joy. Is there a rewarding moment that you can pull out? Is it when one of your guys is victorious, or when you help someone that's really injured recover? Is there one most rewarding component about what you do, Ben?
Sure. And then to answer a question that you didn't ask, but but that's kind of important there to understand, is strength coaches have to understand also, especially young ones, that, you love training, you love to eat well, you love that holistic lifestyle. That you have to understand that not necessarily the hockey guy that you're training likes it as much equally as you do. And you have to get that not, they love to play hockey and they work out because they know it makes them better to play hockey. And you have to understand that we're not trying to win weightlifting awards in the gym. We're trying to get them better to become better on the ice. So there's a lot of times where guys don't want to be here. And
wow,
I've actually found the more skilled the athlete, a lot of times they don't, quote unquote, love to strength train. It's not something they enjoy doing, but they know they have to. And that doesn't mean they're coming in here with a bad energy. It just means that I recognize the fact that, hey, these guys don't love training. So let me understand that and let me push accordingly, but also coach them accordingly. So with that being said, again, the other aspect is, as I mentioned, I try to temper my pats on the back to myself or other people in that, again, it's a team sport. So if Marty St. Louis in the Hall of Fame, I mean, for him to have recognized me in his Hall of Fame speech was, one of the special moments in my career. But by all means, I'm a grain of sand in what helped him get to the point that he got to. And,
wow,
for a strength coach, I think they use the phrases too much. My guy did this, my guy did that. Well, your guy is one of 23 on a hockey team that, it doesn't matter how good he is. It's a one cog in the team. So obviously the people that I train, they're coming to me to have better success. So if they're scoring goals, or to me, if they're healthy for 82 games, and then if they play in the playoffs, those are things that I hold my head up about. I mean, and on the other side of it is, I've lost many, many, many nights of sleep where a guy gets hurt that I train, where I take that, super, super hard. So, sure, there's athletes that, Marty making it to the Hall of Fame, Max Pacioretty coming back from a broken neck and winning Comeback Player of the Year, where I trained him for 4.5 months. He showed up with a neck brace on, and to rehab him to come back and score 30 plus goals and win Comeback Player of the Year, that's a special moment. But again, there's many other factors that are in there than just me. But you take pride in that, and you take pride in the success that you guys have. And I also am humbled when they don't do well. So
that never feels good.
Right. But, again, it's not just me, but it's still, you take it into heart. So.
Of course. I appreciate that, Ben. You're so generous with your time. So I do want to ask you more of a lighthearted question, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
share, because I've heard so many stories about hockey players and had hockey players in my practice. They would put on a certain skate first and they would never, ever move from that superstition. I've had baseball players, God love them, wear the same pair of socks for entire postseason series, which doesn't help anybody. Okay.
Brutal. No.
Do you have any funny superstition?
Yeah, the things that I always see when I'm in the locker room and when I'm on the ice with the guys, it's mostly there's the one guy that gets off the ice last. Even in a game, you'll look one guy. If it's two teams, one guy they'll sort of have a stare down and wait because they want to be the last guy off the ice, and one guy will fake to get off the ice while the other guy gets off. So that's one that I have seen with my guys as well. They when they're coming out of the locker room, they have the same handshakes. They go out in the same order. The last guy out of the locker room's the same guy. On the bus that we sit on, it's the same order on the bus. I've seen also your classic pre-game meal is a big thing, that they eat the same thing, which I obviously try to get them not to, and avoiding food sensitivities and trying to mix it up. But especially again, if they score a goal and they've eaten the same thing, or on the opposite, if they haven't scored a goal in say 5 or 6 games, maybe it's time to switch the pregame meal up, things like that. But in terms of, guys used to wear the same undershirt, but then, the smell and that kind of thing, they'd get chirped too much and they'd have to wash it. So I don't have huge ones other than kind of getting off the ice, kind of falling in line, and the same thing. Those are the big ones that I see.
I appreciate you sharing those. Thanks so much. Ben, can you tell us how can anyone find out about what you do and look you up? Is there a resource you'd like to share with our listeners, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm not big on social media just because that's a whole nother conversation on what I feel about that. In terms of what I do, I know for a lot of businesses it's super, super important. But for me anyway, I have a Twitter. It's Prentiss Hockey, and all I do is just retweet information. I don't ever say anything. And then I have a website, PrentissHockey.com, which we take mentorships, we take internships, which people can apply on there. We usually take 5 or 6 interns every summer, usually college kids, and then we do a mentorship where different strength coaches from schools or teams will pay, and we'll give them 7 days of really in-depth teaching and hands-on work. And then you can call the gym, and that's on the website, or you can email me, which is on the website. And I typically get back to people in 2 days, and I'm happy to always discuss how to help people get better in this industry.
Wow. Ben, you're such a gentleman. I'm so honored that we're friends all these years. I can't thank you enough for spending time with me and doing this podcast for my listeners. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for thinking of me, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.